Hey there guys, what's up? It's JB here, and I'm back to the next part of my card review here. So let's just dive right into it here. We have the new Paladin 1 mana spell. 1 mana, give a minion +1/+2. So the first thing that comes to my mind is that it's a pretty solid buff for 1 mana. Generally, the 1 mana worth of buff stats, it's about 1/1. So this is a little bit more powerful for buff than what you generally get for the mana. Having said that though, in constructed, I don't think you can actually buff a minion well enough for this to be really for it to cause a big enough of an impact uh, because of how refined the decks are. So there's always enough comeback mechanics here. The only really killer thing to this is that you could buff a 3 attack minion into a 4 attack minion and then priest can't touch it anymore. So good thing Knife Juggler's got nerfed. But other than that, I don't think this card is really good in constructed, at least. It might be good enough, but I don't really think so just because of how refined the lists are. But in Arena, this card is amazing, right? And if you can get this on an early drop, odds are you can tempo the game out really easily with Paladin, because Paladin has always been a win more card, right? Or rather, a win more class. So the longer the game goes, the likely you are to win as a Paladin in Arena, and this kind of fits that because it helps you win a lot earlier, and then you just snowball out of control a lot quicker. So really powerful card, I think. In Arena, definitely a top pick. In Constructed, let's just wait to find out, right? Next we have a Light in the Darkness. Discover a minion and give it +1/+1. So this is probably the most comparable card to Unstable Portal that we've ever seen. Unstable Portal right here. Now, Unstable Portal will be exiting out, so generally the Discover mechanic is better than this, and the fact that it still stays around means it's a pretty good thing. Giving it +1/+1 buff is a really good thing. However, I think this card is just way weaker than Unstable Portal, because Unstable Portal gives you a 3 mana discount. So you get Unstable Portal and probably play a minion immediately. This one may not be the case. And most of people forget the real strength of Unstable Portal is that it gives you the discount, right? This is why cards that cost 0 once you Unstable Portal is generally considered bad, because the discount is never really worth it. Unless you get a 3/4 and you play it on turn 2. Having said that though, one thing to note, like, I'm not sure if you guys have actually seen it this way. Personally, I've always looked at the discount, the power of Unstable Portal this way. Cochrane Elite is considered to be a pretty mediocre card in Constructed, right? It's 4/3 charge, which is only an aggressive card. Now, imagine you discount this by 3, or 1 mana 4/3 charge. That's pretty insane. Look at this card. This card is pretty much the garbage of mech cards, right? Gives a friendly mech +2/+2 for 4 mana 2/5. Come on, that's garbage, right? Now imagine you discount this by 3. That's why Unstable Portal is really powerful, and that's why I think this card is not nearly as good as Unstable Portal. In Arena, I think it's fine because the +1/+1 buff is always a pretty big deal, but this is a tempo loss card, so it adds to the archetype of Paladin, where if you're winning, you just win more. So it's good in Arena, but not necessarily in Constructed. Next, you have Stand Against Darkness, which is the obvious successor, kind of, to Masterful Battle. Now, one thing to note is that this card is a lot weaker and a few expansions way too late, because the cards that synergize really well, aka Quartermaster, is exiting the format. So you can't Quartermaster this on Standard. You can do it in Wild. So in Wild, this is probably as good as Masterful Battle in the late game. Maybe even better, because you get 2 more dudes to buff up, and you get practically a full board. But my argument for that is that with the Masterful Battle, on turn 10, you can Masterful Battle 3 mana, Hero Power 2 mana, and then play this for 5 mana, and then it will give you 10. So in turn 10 you can have 4 3/3s and the 2/5 body, as well as a basically Light's Justice, right? This card doesn't give you the Light's Justice, but it gives you one additional 3/3 recruit in that combo, in that scenario. And is that actually better than 1/1 weapon? The answer is no, because the 1/1 weapon helps Paladin deal with the one thing it's struggled with the most generally, which is to deal an additional 1 point of damage, because most of its weapons are really powerful cards are generally out of range by 1, which is why Blessing of Kings is really powerful, right? Because even if you put it on a 1/1 dude, it gives it 5 attack, and then you can kill something with it, as opposed to maybe something like a True Silver, where a Yeti counters this trait equally with this. And that's another reason why Elder Peace, or rather Keeper of Olderman is a big deal, because it reduces its health. It's not so much the attack that you're worrying about when you reduce a creature's, when you nerf a creature with this card. It's more of the health. So do I think this card is good? No, it's way inferior to um, Master for Battle, but don't be surprised if this sees play, because of just the fact that it spawns 5 1/1s is pretty solid as in a vacuum, right? The fact of the matter is that you will never stop comparing this with Master for Battle, which is just vastly superior. In Arena, this card is pretty bad, but in Constructor, I think you might see people tinker around with this. Next, we have the Selfless Hero, 1 mana 2/1, battle, Death Rattle, give a friendly minion Divine Shield. So this obviously goes into aggro decks, which basically gives you the most annoying version of the card that is exiting the format, Shielded Minibot. Well, if you think Shielded Minibot is annoying to drop, can you imagine what Knife Juggler would be with this card? My gosh. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty insane card, I think, because you can always trade with a 3/2, and then it will buff up the Knife Juggler with the Divine Shield, and then you can kill it. It's cards like this that will promote the use of a card that we haven't seen in a long time, that actually saw quite a bit of play, which is the the Blood Knight. So the more Divine Shields there are, the more use there will be. So if aggro Druid Paladin becomes a thing, expect to see a lot of Blood Knights. Next we have Felling Blade, 3 mana, 3/2. Battlecry, give +1/+1 to your minions with Divine Shield. Now the question is, at what point does this become valuable? You basically have to hit 1 minion with Divine Shield, the buff, to make this card good. Is that very doable? The answer is yes. 3 mana 3/2 is probably good enough, because Cogmaster, not Cogmaster, but Coghammer, the other card. This card will be leading. This card has generally been really good because of the Divine Shield taunts. The +1 and Divine Shield is just slightly worse than that, but it's a bigger weapon with less charge. And for a weapon, generally you don't really care about the charges, you care more about the damage. The only exception to that is Wind Fury, but the only reason that's the exception is because it can hit it as Wind Fury. So yeah, overall I think this card is really good. You'll probably see play in both Arena and Constructed. Now we have the Steward of Darkshire. Whenever a minion is summoned, a minion with 1 health is summoned, give it Divine Shield, so 3 mana 3/3. This is a really interesting card. It's kind of like a reverse Hobgoblin in a way. It's cards like this that people build decks around, like Hobgoblin. The only problem is, what minions actually have 1 health that you want to buff? With Master for Battle going out, unless you actually end up using the 5 cost spell, Stand Against Darkness, I don't see why you would play that. Maybe they're trying to incentivize an aggro style, or maybe a Murloc style Paladin, which seems to be the case, because a lot of the Murlocs actually have 1 health. So if that's the reason, then I see it being pretty okay. The question is whether this archetype will kick off or not. We'll find out soon. But again, if this type of deck becomes prevalent, Blood Knight will become prevalent, and then Dark Knight will just Blood Knight will just smash this deck left, right, center. Next we have Forbidden Healing. This is probably the most powerful of the Forbidden cards, even though I'm not a big fan of Forbidden cards in general, which is basically 0 mana, spend all your mana, restore twice that much health. So at what point does this become valuable? I'm guessing the answer would be any mana, you know what I mean? You obviously don't want to do it with 1 mana, but I'm guessing if you do it with 2 and above, it's fairly good. If 2, of course, it's just a worse version of the current healing spell, Holy Light. But in 8 mana, it heals way more than Lay on Hands. In fact, it heals for double what Lay on Hands would heal at 8. And so in terms of pure just healing ability, it's probably the most efficient mana healing card once you pass 3 mana. But is that really good enough? The answer is probably no. Like, there's no scenario where you want to use this card that I can think of anyways. So yeah, pretty bad card. We won't see in Arena or Constructed. Next we have the card that I was saying that this might be the reason why Darkshire, the other one, what's it called, the Darkshire, Steward of Darkshire exists, right? Because they might be trying to push a Paladin, Murloc Paladin thing, and this kind of leads me to believe why, because we have the Powerful Inquisitor, 1 mana, 1/3, pretty good stats. Battlecry, change your hero power becomes summon on 1/1 Murloc. Now, this may seem like arguably a worse ability, but you not just try not to forget that Quartermaster is going out, so there aren't as many synergies with recruits as opposed to how it used to be with the Warhorse Trainer, being the only one that really synergizes well with that. Obviously, this card, the Vilefiend Inquisitor, would help you synergize better with Murloc Knight, because you get a Murloc, and then if you get a buff of Murlocs, you can just basically buff that as well. So I see this card being pretty decent if Murloc Paladin becomes more of a thing. Right now, the only thing that makes me wonder whether that would be a thing or not is because of how Elephant decks work now, which is basically I try to burst you down I let you kill all my Murlocs and then I burst you down with the charges, right? This card throws a wrench in that, because there's a chance that your anything can happen. We just revive a 1/1 Murloc, which is not good. So arguably, I can see how it can be a good card. I'm just not sure if it will be. In Arena, I think it's better to. It's probably slightly worse than having your general hero power. So I don't think this is a good enough 1-drop for Arena. And lastly, we have the Paladin new legendary, Ragnaros Light Lord, the Corrupted Ragnaros or Purified Ragnaros or whatever you call it. At the end of the turn, restore 8 health to a friendly damaged character. So 8 mana, 8/8 is literally the reverse Ragnaros. I know some of you guys, especially if you're a newer player, you have never seen Ragnaros because Ragnaros didn't exist in the meta until very late in Secret Paladin. So Ragnaros does, so 8 mana, 8/8 that deals damage to a random enemy. This heals for 8 to a random ally. So this card I think people shit on unnecessarily. This card is really, really powerful because if you really think about it, at 8 mana, it means you're running a really slow control game, and generally in the 8 slot, what Paladins have is Tyrion and Lay on Hands. Lay on Hands heals for 8 and draws 3. This card is way better than Lay on Hands. Sure, it doesn't draw you 3 cards, but it gives you an 8/8 body, which is the biggest weakness of Lay on Hands. Because against an aggressive deck, you Lay on Hands on 8, and then you heal for 3 and you draw 3 cards, and then they still kill you because you have not contested the board. This card will contest the board, and they're forced to trade into it. Because if you don't trade into it, there's a chance that it might heal up, it might heal you up, and then you just keep trading favorably. This card probably rates better than most single aggro cards, maybe even 2 or 3 aggro cards. So as long as you're not losing like 3-4 minions behind, Ragnaros will actually raise a aggressive deck. And because it heals you, it probably does more than just raise, it probably puts you ahead quite a bit. So yeah, this is a really powerful late game. This is probably what you expect to see as a late game card. Do I think this is good in Arena? I think, yeah. I think this is equally or slightly just slightly worse than the Echo Ragnaros, because in Arena, most minions, people forget that in Arena, a lot of your minions tend to stick because you try to do as many favorable trades as you can, so odds are you're going to have a bunch of damaged creatures. So this is good in the sense that you can heal those creatures, but is it necessarily what you want all the time? Um, Maybe not. But it's definitely one of the better cards, legendaries for Arena. In Constructed, I think if a really heavy control paladin like how it used to be with Tyrion, Lay on Hands, the Guardian of Kings, oh, sorry, sorry about that, Guardian of Kings style with equality, Consecrate, Avenging Wrath, maybe. In that kind of deck, this card is insane. So yeah, really powerful card, like it a lot. You definitely see me craft and play with this card quite a bit. So yeah, that'll be all for me for this video, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. I'm back real soon with the next class. This is JP signing out.